Welcome to the Corporate Learning Network videocast. I'm Jeff Cattell. Today I have with me Ross Smith, Director of Test at Microsoft. Ross will be speaking at two of our upcoming events, Corporate Learning Week, which is happening this week in Orlando, Florida, and Corporate Learning Week Europe, which will take place February 24th through the 26th in Barcelona, Spain. Ross, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate being here.
We're happy to have you as well. So, can you just start by giving our viewers an idea of what's involved with your position as Director of Test at Microsoft?
Sure. I'm, as you mentioned, Director of Test in the Skype division at Microsoft, and we have a team of, well, all up a few hundred people who are really focused on the quality of our communications product, both our enterprise and our consumer. And so hopefully you'll see a high quality video here today. And if not, then that's job security for those of us here to keep us going. So
that's a good
hope for the best.
Yeah. So I know you'll be speaking about at these events, specifically the use of gaming in the workplace, and I know you give it the term productivity games. So, and you're kind of careful, I think, to distinguish between productivity games and then gamification, which has been this big buzzword in at least learning and development. So can you explain to us what are the major differences between those two?
Yeah. So there's an interesting history, and you know, in fairness, the idea of sort of, if I want to use a working definition of gamification, of using game mechanics in non-game situations, the two are identical, really. There's a bit of a challenge. It's sort of in the broader use of the term gamification is people, you know, we know that games can motivate, and to sustain and engage people over a long period of time requires some good game design. You can't just, you know, put a badge on something and assume that everybody's going to go earn, you know, a couple examples I give is the Clean Ross's House badge is who would, you know, I haven't had anyone sign up to earn that badge yet, or the, you know, in our space, the Do More Work badge. So you can use mechanics in ways that do not work. And so that's why trying to draw a little bit of a difference of, hey, there's more here than just, you know, using game mechanics, but you really have to do some good game design to keep people engaged. And so when we think about productivity games, we come in with a very specific objective, not just, you know, do more work, but no, this is a specific activity that is not necessarily part of your regular job. Because one of the things that makes games fun is they're voluntary, right? If your job was to play Monopoly, you know, by the end of your first week, you're completely burnt out. Like, I don't want to play. I'm not doing this anymore. Right? Roll the dice, move the piece. But if it's voluntary, if you can come and go and you know, it's sort of your own free will, then it's a lot more fun. There's a Dutch historian, Johan Huizenga, who talks about this sort of magic circle of play where you enter outside of the real world and there's these artificial rules. And if you think about a soccer field, right? What makes soccer fun for people is these artificial rules in this square piece of grass with goals at each side. And so, so that idea of entering into this magic circle of play, but also being able to leave is what makes things fun.
Very cool. Yeah. I'm wondering, can you give us maybe a specific example of a productivity game that you've used in your position at Microsoft? Sure.
One of our probably most famous, I guess, popular, successful, was what we called the Windows Language Quality Game, creatively named, was to sort of get input from native language speakers around the company about the quality of the linguistic efforts for Windows 7. So we built a very simple browser-based game that would put, you would come in, you would choose the language, and you would have a sort of a fly-in animation of a Windows dialog. And then you would, you know, as a native language speaker, if you would choose your language, so let's say Slovakian or Spanish, or, you know, Windows ships in about 100 languages. So you would then choose, and you would earn a point for reviewing the screen. And so you would either drag it to it looks good, or you would circle an error and drag it to it, you know, needs review. And so we played for about a month, and all over the company, all over the world, and we had about over 4,000 players review 500,000 screens. And so what we could do is we looked for, you know, 10 to 20 to 30 reviews of each screen, and then we had an overlay with transparency, and we could start to see hotspots. And then we would give those to our localization experts to review and quantify and fix if necessary. So very whimsical and not tremendously deep game design. This was not Halo, right?
Yeah.
And yet it was something that people could sort of contribute in a citizenship sort of way and say, hey, I want to make Windows better, and I speak French, and I know that the French version is going to be installed by all my friends and family back home. So sure, I'll take a few minutes at lunchtime, and instead of playing solitaire, I'll play this. So really trying to capture that discretionary time from people.
Yeah, it sounds like the incentive in that isn't, I mean, there's nothing necessarily monetary at that point, or it sounds like it's really this like pride and loyalty is what it, or
Yeah.
also to their homeland and maybe to the company as well.
Yeah, the idea is there's a concept called organizational citizenship behaviors, which are things that I can do to make the organization a better place that are not necessarily part of my job. Mm-hmm. And when you take a combination of core skills that skills that a lot of people have and put them in this citizenship area, it works really well for gameplay. People don't get confused about the example, the Do Ross's Job game, right? If I come in 10th on that, I'm feeling a little awkward, right? And if I come in first, does that mean I get promoted, or does that mean I get to keep my job? I'm not sure, because I've got rewards. But if you put them in these citizenship areas, then people can come in voluntarily, play for a little while, and leave, and it can be more fun and engaging enough that people will participate.
Yeah. Aside from citizenship, I know you focus on that a lot in your talks and what you've spoken about in productivity games. Another thing I know you've mentioned that these productivity games can do is have the capacity to build what you term, I believe, is organizational trust. So can you talk about how games can do that in the workplace and what the power is actually of increasing organizational trust in general?
Yes. Well, really, if you think about the sort of the workplace dynamic these days, that you have far more diversity. We see it in the tech industry, but you really see it everywhere. And you've got cultural diversity, gender diversity, generational diversity. You've got a lot of different perspectives. And then when you think about knowledge work and the idea of sort of creativity and innovation, there's really a set of behaviors that you want to encourage, things like risk-taking and collaboration and experimentation. And a lot of these things, if you have a sort of command and control top-down environment, people are not going to take risks, right? I'm not going to say, oh, I have this crazy, wacky idea that I saw on Facebook yesterday, and we should do that here. Right? If you don't have a climate of high trust, people will not bring those sort of things into the workplace. And so we set off on a journey really focused first on, what can we do to build trust? But if you think about the idea of collaborative play, you and I as coworkers can play a game together, we can be on a team together, and we learn a lot about how what each other's values are, how we work together, how competitive, collaborative we are, and those are some of the basics that would allow us to trust that transparency. If I can predict, okay, I know that you are extremely particular about this particular attribute, I can learn that in a game in a way that's far less risky than the workplace, right? And so as we spend time playing together, I learn more about you. I can take risks in the context of a game that I might not normally take in my job, because the consequence of failure is, well, I lost the game. And so it really does a lot to sort of bring people together and make values and behaviors more transparent, more predictable, which lead to a higher trust organization.
Very cool. Wow, that's really fascinating. I don't think I've ever heard that explained before in such a way. Wow. Before I let you go, one thing I wanted to talk about is sort of this international perspective. As you mentioned, or as I mentioned at the beginning, you'll be speaking at Corporate Learning Week Europe, and Microsoft obviously has employees in dozens of countries across the globe. So for these types of productivity games, maybe the ones that you've specifically put in place, how do they translate into workplaces outside of the U.S.? And are things like the level of adoption different? Are there different preferences for employees in different countries?
Yes, it's very interesting. There's and I can we have definitely had some experience. I'm not an expert in this spot, but I think one of the things early on we noticed is that games transcend culture. Right, I can sit down with someone whose language I don't speak and play a game of chess, and we know what we're doing, and we can have fun together, even though we can't speak with one another. And so the idea of gameplay is universal; it is worldwide. So that aspect, but there are cultural differences, and one particular example comes up in when the boss is ahead or behind the team on a leaderboard, right? And so I know for me, if I'm playing with people on our team and they're all ahead of me, I'm motivated because there's a hierarchy that people follow, and they assume that the boss is going to be on the top, right? And so in the U.S., we find that it's particularly motivating for bosses, right? Because the team will play naturally, and then the boss falls behind and will rally because they want to be ahead of the team. Whereas in other cultures, it's so pronounced that the team won't play until the boss does, right? And so so being respectful, and we've done a lot of our designs. We really kind of focus on, we just want lots of players. So we'll really look at, the glory and shame of the leaderboard is one game mechanic in a player versus player or team versus team environment. But you have, beat your own high score, a player versus self. So can you do this consecutively for 11 days in a row, or things like that, where you're kind of competing with yourself. And then there's sort of player versus environment and puzzles and challenges and things that I can stay engaged with the game that don't really have anything to do with competition. And so really appealing to all those things. And we've also tied a lot of our work to whether it's disaster relief or social causes, so that there's sort of an underlying theme that's bigger than specific game mechanics. And that's been also very successful in keeping people engaged and keep them coming back to participate.
All right, well, very cool. Thanks, Ross, for all your time today.
All right, Jeff. Well, thanks very much, and looking forward to the next few weeks.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, at the beginning, you can meet Ross this week at Corporate Learning Week in Orlando or Corporate Learning Week Europe at the end of February in Barcelona. For more information about the Europe event, you can visit clnweekeurope.com. Thanks for watching.